agree with you, Ben. I would say the Browns will go from not worse to first, but definitely better than what we saw last year. I feel like the Browns can flirt with that playoff spot, that 7th seed. I talked about this last year. You got Shedeur Sanders going in there. He was projected to be a top 40 pick. Some had him number 1, some had him number 2, at worst top 40. He gets in there week 7 when he first got those reps. 3 and 4 as a starter with a World League roster. And then you look at Todd Monken coming in, who wanted him at Georgia, who also wanted him in Baltimore. He saw that in the clip the Browns put out. And you have a better roster around the entire Browns. The offense got better. The defense added some pieces, so they will get better. And I like the attitude that Monken brings in. Plus, you combine all of that talent with a favorable schedule. I know it's a week-to-week league, and you have to see who's out there on the roster first, healthy, before you can say, oh, win, 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 win. But I like the way the Browns have set up this offseason. Shedeur Sanders is a top-tier talent in my eyes, and I feel like they can take advantage of his skill set, along with what they do running the football and with those reception options that he has at his disposal. This is the best setup he's had in every stop he's been, Colorado and also at Jackson State.
You know, Hakeem, Emory reminds me a lot of a few classmates I had. Anytime we had a substitute teacher, they would act out.
Yeah.
You know? So I think it's time to bring the real teacher back to class so he can act how he's supposed to act.
Professor McFadden?
You better believe it.
Okay.
And I am
Take
here.
me to school here.
I'm here, right? Now, let's bring it back to the reality side of things. I love Cincinnati. I'm still a bit concerned with Cleveland. But my team, you better book it. They're going to do big things this year. And this is the Dallas Cowboys. And
I'm going to give you first word because both you and Sean have the same projection, but you are sort of our Browns guy, our Shadur Sanders stand. Take me through what you think here as we take a look at the strength of schedule that Cleveland has to come out with double-digit wins.
This is the 3rd playoff team coming out this division. I have the Browns making the playoffs over Pittsburgh, and I have them going 10-7. The big reason why I like the Browns, you talk about last year with Shedeur Sanders, they went 3 and 4 down the stretch with an NFL Europe roster. This roster looks significantly better, and they probably should have won 5 games. The Bills games they had in the win column and the Titans game, but we know what that happened at the end in that Titans game. So this is a football team that actually played better than a lot of people thought last year, and now you improve the roster. Todd Monken has the unknown factor coming in, and we saw what he did with Stetson Bennett at Georgia, who kept Carson Beck off the bench or on the bench, and this defense is still excellent. The offense now has better weapons at receiver. They have a trio of backs that they can utilize, and the offensive line, most importantly, is significantly better. So I like them to get to the postseason and win 10 games.
Yeah, I guess we were both taking some crazy pills before this, Emory, because 10-7 for the Browns. What are we doing here? But look, I do like the fact they hired Todd Monken. He's coming from Baltimore, so he knows the division well. That should make them competitive. Then you look at the fact that if this team can just get competent quarterback play, they can win games because their defense is so good. And we saw that they do have the easiest strength of schedule. Here's a fun fact for you guys. The AFC team with the easiest strength of schedule has finished with a winning record in 8 straight seasons. So that is a trend that has been going on for a while. We saw the Patriots, easiest strength of schedule last year. They had a new coach in Mike Vrabel. They ran all the way to the Super Bowl. 2 years ago, it was the Chargers who had the easiest AFC strength of schedule. They had a new coach in Jim Harbaugh. They made the playoffs. So there's no reason the Browns can't have that type of turnaround. One thing they are going to have to get better at is winning road games. They've gone 3-14 on the road in the past 2 seasons. So if they get the quarterback situation figured out and figure out how to win on the road, I think the Browns could certainly surprise some people this year.
Guys, great stuff on a Friday. Quickly, those in the back, can we give Emory a full frame here? Because the man was able to switch his helmets within a 2-minute break to go from the NFC East to the AFC North, and that's why they call him the czar of the playbook. Guys, certainly appreciate it. Thanks for hopping on. As you take a look at the odds to win the AFC North, Ravens are the betting favorite, but if I was listening to what the guys are saying, they each think 3 teams will make it to the postseason, both agreeing on the Ravens and Bengals.
What if the Browns are not just being underrated right now? What if they are actually setting up the kind of season that turns into one of the biggest stories in the NFL? Because when you really listen to that cut, it is not casual praise. It is strong praise. It is playoff praise. It is the kind of take that says Cleveland is not just improved, Cleveland might be ready to shock people. One analyst flat out says the Browns are the 3rd playoff team coming out of the AFC North and gives them a 10-7 record. That is not small talk. That is belief. And the reason that belief exists starts with one major point. This roster is better, deeper, more balanced, and more prepared to compete than the one we saw a year ago. And right in the middle of that optimism is Shedeur Sanders. That matters, because the argument being made is not just that the Browns have talent. The argument is that Shedeur already showed enough last season to make people believe this thing can go higher in 2026. They pointed out that he helped the Browns go 3-4 down the stretch with what was basically being described as an NFL Europe level supporting cast. Think about that. Even when the team around him was limited, even when things were messy, even when the offense did not look complete, there were still signs that the Browns were more competitive than the record alone might have suggested. That is why Shedeur remains such a huge piece of this entire conversation. Because now the environment around him is changing. Now the Browns are not walking into a season with the same weaknesses, the same excuses, and the same broken structure. Now the offensive line is being talked about as significantly better. The skill talent is better. The receiver room has more juice. The backfield has multiple options, and Todd Monken steps into this whole thing as the fresh voice, the unknown factor, the coach who could unlock more out of the offense than people expect. That is what makes this so dangerous for the rest of the conference. If Shedeur takes even a real step forward, not a miracle leap, just a real step, this offense could suddenly become much more functional, much more explosive, and much harder to deal with. And that is where the schedule comes in, because the cut also leans heavily on this idea that the Browns have the easiest schedule in the NFL based on last season's records. That is massive. That is not a guarantee, but it is a real opportunity. A favorable schedule can become the runway for a breakout season if the quarterback play is stable and the roster does its job. And that is why the Browns are such an interesting team right now. They do not need perfection to be dangerous. They need solid quarterback play, a stronger offense than last year, and the same kind of edge on defense that has already made them tough. If they get that, then 10 wins is not crazy. It's very realistic. And honestly, Browns fans should love hearing that, because it means the league is starting to see what this team might become. The defense is still respected. Todd Monken is respected. The improved offensive line is being noticed. The weapons are being noticed. And most importantly, Shedeur Sanders is still at the center of why people believe this team can rise. That says a lot, because in a franchise that has spent years bouncing between uncertainty and frustration at quarterback, Shedeur is still being talked about as one of the reasons this team could make real noise. That is not accidental. That is because people saw enough last season to believe there might be something real there if the roster around him catches up. Now, does that mean everything is solved? No, not at all. The cut does bring up one very fair concern, and that is the Browns' road record. They have struggled badly away from home over the last 2 seasons, and that has to change if this team is actually going to make the playoffs. That is real. That is part of the test. But even that point strengthens the overall message, because it shows this is not empty hype. The Browns still have to prove they can travel, execute, and win under pressure. But the difference now is that they seem to have a roster good enough to actually attack that problem instead of being buried by it. So my take is this. This could be a historic year for Cleveland if the pieces come together the right way. Not because people are handing the Browns anything, not because the division suddenly got soft, but because there is finally a real case for optimism that goes beyond emotion. Shadur Sanders has upside. The roster is better. The coaching is changing. The line is stronger. The skill talent is better. The schedule is favorable. That is a serious combination. And if Shedeur becomes one of the main engines driving this team forward, then the Browns are not just a playoff possibility. They become one of the most dangerous sleeper teams in football. Tell me in the comments, Dawg Pound, do you believe Shedeur Sanders can be one of the main reasons the Browns hit 10 wins and make a playoff run this year? Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay locked in, because Cleveland might be building something much bigger than people realize.